Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a US political update, a breaking news sort of update and analysis. Most of you will know now that the US government has gone into shutdown because neither side in Congress has been able to agree a funding bill. This is a third shutdown under a Trump administration. Two took place in the last Trump administration, and this is the first one since the Trump administration. So this is something Trump is quite used to doing. In fact, there was a 35-day shutdown that cost $11 billion in Trump's, and that was the longest shutdown on record in Trump's first administration. So he is no stranger to this kind of activity, and it is incredibly painful for the American civil service, but as well the economy. And actually, there are some claiming that this is perfectly on purpose, that the Republicans want to get rid of 100,000 civil service jobs, and this is one way in which they can do it. They can furlough and then offload a whole bunch of civil service employees so that they can push through their agenda. Many people are saying that is a point. Now, I'm going to talk about the government shutdown. I'm also going to dip into a debate I am sort of involved with, a viewer on my channel called Launcher IT, wanting a good faith debate on how wonderful Trump is outside of Ukraine. I think he admits that on Ukraine he's not very good, but everything else he's the best thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, seriously? I am very wary of such debates because it turns out that the foundations are pretty shaky. And I'm going to talk about analogizing. I'm going to draw the analogy with debating with young Earth creationists, where you just speak a different language and you end up not being able to debate because you can't agree on the basis of science, right? And so it then becomes completely pointless because they can't budge at all. And there's an element of that in this debate. But anyway, let's just draw our attention to what is going on with regard to the shutdown. So this is the Guardian Live blog. US government shuts down after Democrats refuse to back Republican funding plan. Now, just to give you how this works, the Republicans have a trifecta, right? So they run government. They have the executive, which is the White House. They have the Senate, which is the 100 senators, and they have the House of Representatives, which is 438 or however many representatives. They control all three. And it's very difficult, therefore, to blame Democrats if the government is unable to do something, since they control government. What it means here, though, is because there is a need for a 60-vote majority in the Senate, a filibuster, it means that actually they can't just ram this through with a simple majority because they don't have 60 senators. They would need 7 senators to cross the aisle. Now, this is not unusual. So what you have to do with a funding agreement, and rightly so, is you should have the agreement of at least some of the other party. You need bipartisan work to get an agreement on how to fund the government. This then stops the party in charge, if they've only just got a slim majority, slamming through something that is incredibly controversial. You need a compromise. So this is where the Democrats have leverage, but what it shouldn't mean is the Democrats just roll over and say, yeah, you can have what you like. Now, because the Democrats you have to have the agreement of some Democrats here, this allows the Republicans to blame the Democrats, even though they are the party in power and they have the trifecta. The Democrats are blaming the Republicans for not compromising, for not really taking any meetings seriously, and we'll talk about that in a minute. In fact, it was not looking like they were going to meet at all because Donald Trump was looking like he was going to cancel any meeting. It then happened in the Oval Office, but Donald Trump used that as an excuse to do a photo shoot for his 2028 rule. Like, this is literally these are literally the photos that Donald Trump released. And we're going to hear from Hakeem Jeffries, where he's like, these caps weren't there originally, and then suddenly they appeared and they started taking photos. In other words, I'm not so certain that Donald Trump was at all interested in doing any bipartisan work in securing a funding agreement there. Just a photo shoot. Anyway, as the Guardian continues here, Democrats and Republicans angrily blamed each other and refused to budge from their positions as the country hurtled towards the midnight ET deadline, unable to find agreement or even negotiate as hundreds of thousands of federal workers stood to be furloughed or laid off. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer and Republicans were trying to bully Democrats by refusing to negotiate on an extension of healthcare benefits and other priorities. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said Republicans were, quote, not going to be held hostage by the Democrats' demands. Hours before the shutdown, Donald Trump told reporters he had, quote, no choice but to lay off federal workers if no deal was reached. Asked about why he was considering mass layoffs, Trump said, quote, no country can afford to pay for illegal immigration, healthcare for everybody that comes into the country, and that's what the Democrats, are insisting. Now, the caveat here is that, or the fact check here is that that's not what they're insisting, by the way. That's a misrepresentation of what the Democrats are asking for. Nonetheless, we'll go on. They want open borders. They want men playing in women's sports. They want transgender for everybody. They never stop. They don't learn. We won an election in the landslide. They just don't learn. We have no choice. I have to do that for the country. What is he talking about? Like, this is a funding arrangement that is not about transgender people and men playing in women's sports. But of course, that's how he's trying to sell this, as a distraction away from the simple fact that he is not willing to come to a compromise with the Democrats on the funding arrangements. Now, in a polarized Washington, with the chambers narrowly divided, shutdown threats have become a feature of recent congressional budget battles. A standoff in 2018 during Trump's first term resulted in a 34-day shutdown, the longest in a modern era. So this tells you, like, that the last three shutdowns have happened under Trump. It shows you that Republicans are unwilling to compromise with the Democrats. That you got funding arrangements right throughout Biden's administration shows you that the Democrats are willing to do bipartisan compromises with the Republicans. Honestly, like, I can't read that in any other way. So during his first time, a 34-day shutdown, the longest in a modern era. At that time, roughly 800,000 of the federal government's 2.1 million employees were sidelined without pay. So what happens is people are furloughed without pay until they end up coming back to work when they do get paid. I think the core, there are certain workers who do have to still do their work. Some workers still do their work without getting paid. Some workers do their work with getting paid because it's absolutely crucial. And you can't have them not getting paid, because otherwise the country would just, like, you'll have health and safety issues and all sorts. But there are, and actually this live blog does a really good job further down of explaining, how the government shutdown is affecting all different domains, whether it be, the parks and this and that. So this is a pretty good explainer. But anyway, yeah, the shutdown has happened. I'm just going to read the latest one that's just hit the live blog here. As a midnight deadline approached last night, the Senate again rejected a Republican plan to keep federal funding flowing and avert a government shutdown. In a pair of back-to-back votes, each party mostly united to block the other's stopgap funding proposal, all but ensuring a partial shutdown for the first time in nearly 7 years. Both measures needed 60 votes to pass. Republicans united against a plan offered by Democrats to fund the government through the end of October. That would also have reversed the Medicaid cuts. So this is the core issue here, is that the Republicans want to cut medical aid to the American public, and the Democrats don't. And that is what they're arguing over, which is why I think the Democrats are more justified here. Enacted as part of Donald Trump's tax and spending mega bill this summer, and extend healthcare subsidies that make health insurance premiums more affordable for low and middle income people who purchase healthcare insurance through the Affordable Care Act. So essentially, the Republicans don't want to make healthcare more affordable for low and income people. That is what they're fighting over. That is a hill they are dying on. Nearly all Democrats voted to reject a House-passed plan that would have kept federal spending mostly at current levels through 21st of November and bolstered security for the executive branch officials, the Supreme Court, judges and members of Congress in the wake of the assassination of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. So there you go. It is not looking good at the moment. Now, we're going to listen to Caitlin Collins just for a wee while.
The last two government shutdowns that happened came during President Trump's first term in office. The last shutdown, which was also the longest in modern American history, did cost the U.S. economy $11 billion. The last two government...
So we could be looking at a similar situation or not. It could be much shorter. There could be some agreement that is reached. But $11 billion was very costly. And we are at a fragile time, or the Americans are at a fragile time. We all are, I think, in the global economy, where what the US is doing in terms of trade wars with everyone else, with regard to tariffs, with regard to their big, beautiful bill, I think is endangering their economy in a really significant way. Now, as mentioned, I said I was going to have this online debate with someone called Launcher IT, who seemed to be a good faith debater, but then appears to just be fully in the MAGA mindset that and uses language that I think is, quite reflective. But anyway, as a form of stimulus, I will read some of this particular comment out to take us on. So Trump is trolling you. What JP doesn't realize is that Trump is using judo on the toxic left-wing media cartel in the US. The media tried to insinuate that Trump is exceeding his authority by sending troops. JP takes a bait. Fact, Trump is sending troops to federal facilities only, which the left-wing media never reveal because they want to amplify fear in the country. Trump calls their bluff by saying that he is sending troops, but he admits that it is only to federal facilities which he is authorized to do. Fact, ICE building was damaged due to protests, rioting and vandalism on 15th of June 2025, and Portland police did not respond in a timely manner. Several other incidents occurred prior to this in Portland, LA, Chicago, Seattle, New Jersey, etc. Now, this is to do with troops going to different cities, Democrat cities, that I think is a complete overstretch. And I think it's thoroughly problematic. And if I had a vandalism of one of my local facilities in the UK here, I wouldn't expect 4 months later there to be troops sent into Fareham, national troops here. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, let's then get on to what we're talking about with regard to the shutdown of... So this is kind of where he's at, the left-wing kind of cabal. So are you this left-wing media cartel, which is, if you saw CNN in the UK or in Europe, and the idea that it would be left-wing media cartel is ridiculous. It is obviously centrist, politically speaking. You don't really get, although they are occasionally getting on like Anna Kasparian and Adam Mockler, the odd progressive, but generally you don't see progressives on, and the same can be said for MSNBC. Actually, they have been more corporatist rather than progressive. So I think it's a complete misnomer, and the idea that all of these other news sources are in some kind of left-wing media cabal. But anyway, cartel. Here's the important part for this video. Are you ignorant of the Senate 60-vote threshold for filibuster? The majority of the House, Senate, and of course Trump support keeping the government open with a clean bill, simply funding the government at current levels in order to achieve a budget compromise. However, the Democrats are using the filibuster to inflict their minority in order to shut down the government. This is a fact. Why is it not that the Republicans are not using their position to shut down the government and get rid of jobs? Why is that not a fact? So this is very cherry picking. A New York Times Siena poll shows that 2/3 of citizens disagree with Schumer and Democrats' decision to filibuster, which is an interesting way of looking at that poll, by the way. We'll look at that in a second. In order to shut down the government. Really, JP, you need to at least widen your channels if you want to analyse US politics. You keep getting drawn to only confirming news and rejecting disconfirming perspectives, which are often uncontested facts. I understand that you seriously believe that this shows that I'm not a good faith interlocutor. What about the fact that the minority Democrat represented Senate is using a filibuster to shut down the government, or that a strong majority of Americans disapprove of the Senate Democrats' use of the filibuster to shut down the government? Maybe you believe that the New York Times Siena poll is not reliable or representative. Okay, so let's have a little look at that then. And I would hugely contest that. So there are 3 polls that we can look at with regard to the government shutdown. 2 of these are talked about in USA Today. So a 5-day New York Times survey, which I presume Launch IT is talking about, It says here in the USA Today article, most US voters surveyed said both parties would be at fault for a shutdown at 33%. Yet between the two parties, a little more than a quarter of respondents, 26%, said that they would blame congressional Republicans and President Donald Trump, and 19% pointed the fingers at Democrats. In other words, I don't know how he's interpreted that poll as to be blaming the Democrats, because the 5-day New York Times poll has more people blaming the Republicans than Democrats. Another 21% said they had not heard enough about the shutdown to say who was responsible. So the poll was conducted September 27th through 22nd through 27th. Now, here's the important part, because what you'll find with these polls is that they become partisan and you double down on your own people. So Republicans will not want to blame the Republicans for the shutdown, and Democrats will not want to blame Democrats. So you're just going to vote along party lines. So what you want to do is really look at the independents and see where they sway, and that gives you more of a barometer as to who is probably at blame for this, or at least if you're interested in what the public think. So independent voters held an even dimmer view of Republicans in the survey, and this is presumed the survey he's actually talking about, with respondents twice as likely to assign blame to Trump and the GOP than to Democrats. Though respondents considered Democrats less at fault than Republicans, 2/3 said Democrats should not shut the government down if their demands are not met. Okay, so there is that. Then there is another Pew Research Center survey of 3,445 adults. So that's quite, actually, if you understand sampling, that's not a bad sample. US adults, respondents shared broadly unfavorable views of congressional leaders, though opinions were divided along party lines. More Democrats disapproved than approved of their own party's leaders' job performance in Congress. I think this is in general. This is looking at Chuck Schumer as being weak and not fighting enough for Democrats, which is why Gavin Newsom has now become far, far more popular, because he's actually fighting. So on and so forth. We want to get to the... when asked about, so actually that one's not looking too much at the government shutdown. This is the other one, the Maris poll, which is the poll you see here. So this is the second poll on the government shutdown. Opinions of congressional Republicans were harsher in a Marist poll conducted September 22nd through 26th among 1,477 US adults. Nearly 4 in 10 Americans said Republicans would be to blame for the shutdown at 38%, while another 31% said they blamed both parties. As in the New York Times survey, Democrats were the third most likely to be blamed at 27%. 4% of respondents said they would not blame either political party. So here you've got the difference between 38% and 27%, so 11% difference, probably going to be underwritten by independents as well, but I don't have the metadata for that. So in other words, going back to what this guy kind of bombastically says, relying on polls to factually point out X and Y, I would say the polls do not support you at all. And it seems like at the moment, the general public are more likely to support the idea that Republicans are at fault for the government shutdown. Now let's go to Jessica Tarlov fighting her corner on Fox News.
Jessica, that letter from the OMB director is essentially a threat that this shutdown happens, you're going to fire people that the discretionary funding doesn't cover.
And Donald Trump made the same threat when he was speaking earlier today as well. He said we can do a lot of really bad things. We can do things that they don't want us to do. And yes, Democrats don't want people to get fired, and Democrats don't want people to lose their health care. But I think the Republican Party is trying to act like they have the upper hand, and they just don't on the merits. First of all, 45% of Americans would blame them versus 32% that would blame the Democrats. And we saw what happens when you give Republicans the votes. We did that in March, and they have governed by and for themselves. They think they don't have to negotiate, when typically on these kinds of things, on CRs, you do that because you don't have the 60 votes to do it.
I hear the polls. I hear what you're saying, but this is kind of simple. This is a plain fund the government. continuing resolution.
But it's a clean
Either you do it or
resolution
you don't.
inclusive of these cuts. And there are smart Republicans like a Josh Hawley, even Senator Thune has said that he's been concerned about this. When you look at what's going to happen with 114% hikes on these ACA premiums, that affects Democrats just as much as Republicans. And there are a lot of Republicans on Obamacare.
So it's going to come down to Medicaid and Medicare. And there are very many Republican voters who will be badly affected by what the Trump administration is trying to do here. And so that is why you will have some Republicans like quietly go, yeah, I'm a bit concerned about this. But of course, they can't be seen to want to compromise or not vote for this because that's the end of their job. That's the hold that Trump has over his politicians. Now, this photo apparently shows the House Democrats in full attendance to stop the government shutdown, while the Republican side of the chamber is empty. So I go back to Launcher IT, blaming Republicans for this, but it seems that only one party is serious about trying to end this this government shutdown. There's another video actually we have here. Republicans just brought the House into session for a total of 2 minutes. Democrats tried to bring up legislation to keep the government open, keep children on their insurance, and keep healthcare costs from doubling. Then they adjourned. The GOP will own this shutdown. And look at how empty the Senate is here.
Is approved. The chair will lead the House in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, indivisible. Pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1, the House stands adjourned until 3:30 p.m. on Friday, October 3rd at 2025.
So the Pledge of Allegiance, and then adjourns a meeting. And that's the end of that. See you later, guys. See you on the 3rd. And the Democrats there really not happy. So I go back to people like this, and I pick this guy out as indicative of many people, like moaning about the liberal media cartel and moaning about Democrats and the filibuster. But do you know what? I see this as the Republicans trying to strong arm their big, beautiful bill through, and their cuts and the funding that will cut medical aid, really important medical aid. And you would expect some kind of compromise between these two parties, but no compromise is even being sought by the Republicans. They're not even interested. And that's the key point. In fact, it's so pathetic that, no, it's not so pathetic that. What makes it even worse is a pathetic response by Donald Trump, which is where I just continue to have a complete lack of respect for the, at the moment, the Republican Party, but particularly the Trump administration. And I find it really hard to converse with people who really seriously think Donald Trump is a dog's bollocks, that Donald Trump is the best at everything outside of, admitting that is not so good on Ukraine. But everything else, freedom of speech, he's honestly arguing that Trump is the best on freedom of speech after the last month. It's amazing. But to think that Donald Trump is the person who should be the unifying leader of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, of the country, and he does stuff like this. So this was after the meeting where he used it as a photo opportunity to have pictures taken of Hakeem Jeffries next to Trump 2028, an unconstitutional cap, because he's talking about running again, somehow remaining in power after 2028, right? He then releases this AI video that I did a video on yesterday, where the AI video calls them woke pieces of shit. So this is after Schumer and Jeffries meet with Trump today. Trump posted an AI video calling them woke pieces of shit. So I just want to play this again in full. It's only 36 seconds, just to ask you, all of you watching this, and particularly Launch IT, like, is this what you would expect of a fecking president of the United States? Like, would you want, like, how would you react if Obama did something like this? It's absolutely unconscionable, I think.
Look, guys, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Nobody likes Democrats anymore. We have no voters left because of all of our woke trans bullshit. Not even black people want to vote for us anymore. Even Latinos hate us. So we need new voters. And if we give all these illegal aliens free health care, we might be able to get them on our side so they can vote for us. They can't even speak English, so they won't realize we're just a bunch of woke pieces of shit, you know, at least for a while until they learn English and they realize they hate us too. Look, guys.
And that's what Donald Trump posted after that meeting with Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to try and sort out the funding for the entire government. That this is how frivolously and unseriously he's taking it. That you could see the loss of 100,000 jobs, 800,000 people without pay, and that's what he posts. So don't give me the whole Donald Trump is a wonderful leader BS, because it's objectively nonsense in my opinion. And if you can't agree that this is not helpful, then just like if I can't agree on the basics of science, of carbon dating, of geology, if you're going to say that the devil has come down and put fossils into rocks, then like we can't be having this discussion. We can't be talking about anything up here if we can't agree on what's down here, right? So that was a problem I used to have with the creationists. I used to debate young Earth creationists who believed that the Earth is 6,000 years old. And then you realise that nothing touches the sides because they just have a different kind of rational basis, and they are willing to use their kind of rational toolbox to deny basic scientific facts. You're like, well, we can't agree on this, then what's the point of arguing about this up here? So then I gave up debating with them because it's all pointless. You're not going to move the needle at all. And so I wonder with some people I debate with regard to Donald Trump, like, I'm not going to change the needle on you because look, this is what you think is going on. You're well ensconced in your Fox News world, and then you have a go at me for not having an understanding and having too narrow a viewpoint. I mean, I see what's going on. I watch enough Fox News to know what's going on. I see a lot of differing media sources from OAN and Newsmax and Fox News right across to MSNBC and CNN. And I think from an outsider, I've got a fairly good grasp of what's going on in the US to be able to be fairly accurate. Of course, I'm going to think that in terms of what's going on here. And, you know, Jeffries himself was pretty annoyed at this and did a beautiful response here. Hakeem Jeffries, so he's a minority speaker in the House of Representatives for the Democrats. Jeffries answers Trump's fake gross AI video with a real Epstein besties pic. So he said Trump posts vulgar deepfake slam of Democratic leaders after White House meeting. Hakeem Jeffries says, this is real. Like, that's not real. That's AI generated. This picture, this is real. What is it? Trump and Epstein. That's just a beautiful comeback there. Now, Trump has then subsequently, because he is the wonderful leader that he is, the unifying leader, trying not to send the government into a shutdown, came out and doubled down and created another video of Hakeem Jeffries. And this is what Trump is posting as the government prepares to shut down on his watch. Trump posts racist AI video after White House meeting with Dems, and then another video as well, two videos and other sort of images associated with his output. So this is another video from
this
Donald Trump.
Disgusting video, and we're going to continue to make clear, bigotry will get you nowhere. We are fighting to protect the health care of the American people in the face of an unprecedented Republican assault.
I mean, are you actually serious about governing the country? 50% of the country, like, disagree with you. Like, just broadly, let's assume that all the time. Democrats, Republicans, okay, you got independents and blah, blah, blah. But let's assume that 50% of the country generally disagrees with you no matter what party you are. Like, you have to be serious about the country being made up of people with whom you disagree with and who disagree with you. And you need to appeal to them. And you need to work with them. Because if you work against them constantly, and if you're ridiculing them constantly in these corridors of power, I'm not talking about people like me and people in the media calling the other side fascists and whatever, which, by the way, both sides are doing. Trump has done that. JD Vance has done that, blah, blah, blah. So the idea that the left keep calling the right fascist is simply not true. But in the corridors of power, you've got to reach across the aisle and you've got to work with the other side. So we've had this situation whereby I don't think the Republicans were serious in trying to come to a funding agreement. This is what Hakeem Jeffries says to Abby Phillips on CNN.
When he tried to hand you that Trump 2028 hat, what was your reaction?
Well, actually, he did not try to hand Leader Schumer and I the Trump 2028 hat. They just randomly appeared in the middle of the meeting on the desk. It was the strangest thing ever. And I just looked at the hat, looked at JD Vance, who was seated to my left, and said, "Don't you got a problem with this?" And he said no comment. And that was the end of it.
All right.
Which is fascinating because JD Vance, if Trump runs again in 2028, then JD Vance doesn't run to be president. And you would think he's being lined up to be the next president because Trump shouldn't be able to run twice, more than twice. JD Vance saying no comment to that, I guess, is pretty revealing. Then we have this exchange concerning the videos that Trump put out here about subsequent to the meeting in the White House. Now, you probably won't be able to hear it too much there, but basically, Money Reggie reports, just saw Democrat Representative Madeline Dean confront Speaker Johnson off House floor after the CR, continuing resolution, I presume, healthcare recessing chamber, Trump's speech. And on Trump's AI video, Johnson says, "It wasn't my style." Not your style. It's disgraceful. It's racist. You should call it out. And there's, this is more of this is caught on camera as well. Asked Dean about this later. He asked me, like, rhetorically, "Is that really racist?" She says, "It's really racist. It's despicable, and you should have called it out." And I said, "Did you see what the president did in that performance before the generals?" He said he hadn't seen it. Dean said she told Johnson of Trump's Quantico speech. I said, "You should watch it. The president is unwell. That somebody needs to go to him." Fascinating insight there into the sorts of conversations that are going on around the sides here. Now, something else that I want to bring your attention to, should I do a whole separate video for this? Probably. Mike Johnson is also stopping this woman, Adelita Grijalva, who her father, I think, died in, is it Arizona? 7th district in Arizona. And she's just won a special election really handily, right? She won it 70% to 20-something%. Doubled the Democrat lead in that district. And Mike Johnson won't sign her in. As someone says, this is effing crazy. She won her race and they refused to swear her in to fight for her constituents. Why are they refusing to swear her in? Because she is now the extra signature they need for the discharge petition to publish the Epstein files. So the Republicans, I go back to your man I'm debating with here and saying, are you really serious about how Trump and the Republicans are the be all and end all and how wonderful they are and they're the best on everything in the world? When if this kind of behavior was happening the other way around, you'd be spitting fire. You'd be going absolutely nuts. Those videos produced by the president, if the shoe was on the other foot. And now Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, is refusing to swear her in. So she is unable to vote to publish the Epstein files. Now, I am been unsure about whether to do this because I don't know if this is all hearsay or what. I'm now going to do the end of this video on a subject that's somewhat different to the government shutdown. And it's actually to do with, in the first case, it's to do with Mike Johnson. but it's something that's been going on under the radar, and I don't know if any of you are aware of this. And this is about hypocrisy. So this is nothing about being homosexual and about any kind of moral evaluation of that from my point of view, but it's about, look, if you are up and standing in front of your constituents and standing in Congress and you are slating homosexuals and you are trying to enact legislation that is anti-LGBT, then that's a problem if it turns out that you might be gay yourself. I want to affix all of what I'm going to say now with allegedly, but there's a chap here who came out the other day and basically said he has evidence that Mike Johnson is on Grindr. Now, if you remember when the RNC, the Republican National Committee convention, was taking place, Grindr crashed because so many people were on Grindr. Grindr is a gay dating app. Now, isn't that interesting that it crashed when loads of Republicans were in town? Because they're the ones that are campaigning against LGBT legislation or legislation of equality. And when Charlie Kirk had his memorial, the same happened. Grindr crashed in Arizona, which is where it was at. Wow. Now we had this guy that came out the other day, and this is getting heated because he's been now approached by legal people from the other side. So this is what he initially said.
Hey, here's a message for...
And by the way, this video has been taken off TikTok because now TikTok in the US is run by the conservatives, run by the GOP. This was taken off TikTok, but here it is on Twitter.
Hey, here's a message for Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Pay attention, bud. This is for Mike Johnson. If you're not Mike Johnson, you can keep scrolling or you can stay here and listen to what I have to say. Hey, Mike, you have until Wednesday to swear her in. Wednesday. Or I will release your Grindr profile and your IP address. I bring receipts, bitch. You're not going to sit there and actively work against LGBTQ rights and democracy. It is treason. Yeah, I'm calling you out for treason. You have until Wednesday to swear her in and let democracy take its course, or I will release your Grindr profile and your IP address. Connects both to you, Mike. The choice is yours. Do the right thing. Because I'm petty. And I'm not above this bullshit. Go fuck yourself.
Okay, now, you might think, well, okay, is this really worth talking about? Well, probably, actually, because this could be the undoing of Mike Johnson, right? Then you had this released by the same guy.
Well, to say the last 24 hours has been stressful and chaotic would be an understatement. I have been talking with a lot of people, including a fantastic team of lawyers. And I want to assure everyone, I am not a danger to myself or others. I am in a safe place. I have discussed this with other people. I am no longer the only person with this information. It is backed up multiple times. This in no way was a shakedown for anything. I stand to benefit nothing from this. I'm safe. My lawyers are figuring out next steps now, and I'll be laying low.
Okay, and then there was this.
MAGA has a...
Oh, no, not that one. That is coming in a little while. So here it is. This is from Tuesday, his local time. So obviously, we're on Wednesday now.
In consultation with close friends, family, and my attorney, we have decided the following steps are necessary. Any and all materials in my possession related to this matter have now been turned over to a trusted media authority. an investigative journalist who will then vet the information and report as necessary. Any and all copies of this information that were in my possession are now out of my possession and have been turned over to several different sources. If anything should happen to me, this will trigger those sources to release that information as well. This is hard. This is something I never planned on. Obviously, it got the attention it did. TikTok has put an account ban warning on my account and taken down that video. So I'm keeping you updated, as many people have asked me to do. I am not backing down. This is democracy. Democracy will prevail. They may get me in the short term, but in the long term, democracy will prevail. Now is the time for us to stand up and speak out for what is right. They can remove my videos, they can silence me. It's your turn. Please stand up for what's right. Get loud. Civil disobedience may be the answer here. The best thing you can do, and people have asked me this, is to go to the link in my bio and help my legal defense fund. This is going to be very expensive, and lawyers like to get paid. This is in no...
So on and so forth. Now, you may cast all sorts of aspersions on this, but anyway, that appears to be going through a sort of a legal process. There is another person chipping in on this same discussion.
So PolitiFact,
or not so much discussion, but on this topic.
Messaged me inquiring about the Mike Johnson Grindr conversation, and they wanted to verify that this was a true story, and they asked to speak directly to the person who was making these claims. And so I messaged the person and I said, you know, PolitiFact wants to message you. Do you want to talk to them? Well, he said no. Obviously, he wants to remain anonymous. The only reason why he shared
slightly
it with me
different
is because he's been following
to
me
the
and trusts
picture.
me. So I told them that he said he's not willing to do that. And PolitiFact went through with the story and claimed that there's no truth to it and it's a false story because the picture that he shared was from March 5th, 2025. And so then I reached back out to the person and I said, hey, they're saying that this picture was from March 5th, 2025. What gives? And he responded and said, no. This picture was from 2023. And he sent me an uncropped version of the conversation with the date. And it checks out. That picture was sent in 2023. So he was having this conversation on Grindr with Mike Johnson, allegedly, in 2023, which was before Mike Johnson became Speaker of the House. This is another argument that PolitiFact is making, that why would the Speaker of the House be sharing his picture and be meeting at a public place and blah, blah, blah. This was before he was Speaker of the House. Case closed.
I don't know. You're going to see more on that, no doubt. But then this opened up a whole can of worms because there's a really interesting video from Rebel Rundown looking at 4 different people that they've gone and done some research into. And again, this isn't anything to do with, you know, there's no evaluation of, okay, these people are gay. You know, so what? I don't give a monkeys. But if they are being deeply hypocritical by trying to put in legislation that is anti-LGBT, then actually we've got a problem of hypocrisy. So there is a video from Rebel Rundown, I think it is, where they get one of their peeps to look at 4 different people. They look at Marco Rubio, Josh Hawley, Benny Johnson, and I saw some rumors the other day about Benny Johnson and someone coming out and speaking about their interactions with Benny Johnson. But I didn't say, you know, there's the rumors you see on the internet, but they don't talk about Lindsey Graham here because he's famously, like, there's a lot of compromise on him. And they actually mention Mike Pence, although I think the evidence from Mike Pence was a lot less. But the other 3, particularly Marco Rubio, fascinating. And it's really interesting because I was watching House of Guinness on Netflix, which is about the Guinness family back in the 1860s. And one of the main protagonists is a guy who was one of the sons of the then Guinness head of the family, who was gay and then had what was called a mariage blanc, like a wedding that was set up to cover up the fact that he was gay. And it was all kind of accepted by the people. It's a slightly fictionalized story, but actually I was like, oh, is this true? And I was actually looking into it, and it does completely check out. And so, this has been happening for hundreds of years. So is there a chance that some of these Republicans are indeed gay and have marriages of convenience and whatnot? Quite possibly. But why am I talking about this at the end here? Well, you've got Mike Johnson that sometimes comes out with, and Lindsey Graham on Ukraine comes out with like what they really think about Putin and what they really like to happen with regard to Ukraine. And then suddenly they are just saying the opposite or saying things that go against that. Like, what is going on behind the scenes? And of course, the party whips will have leverage against these people. I mean, you can go and watch this video. You can go and watch a clip here. I was going to play you the clip on Marco Rubio because I found it fascinating. But anyway, these will be linked in the description below. And, allegedly, and all the caveats applied. But it doesn't surprise me. I used to report from an atheist point of view, writing for Patheos and then Only Sky. And the amount of times you'd have a pastor who was homophobic and saying all these things, and then it turns out that there were pictures. They had rent boys and whatever. Like it was above statistically random. It was just like there was something going on there. So the people that push back an awful lot more publicly, it seems are I think, slightly more likely to have a past that they want to conceal themselves anyway, or a present. So government shutdown is taking place. The Republicans are going to be blaming the Democrats. Democrats are going to be blaming Republicans. The reaction from Donald Trump is, I think, absolutely inexcusable and immature and unbecoming of a president. Mike Johnson in private saying, well, yeah, it's not the sort of thing I would do. And then not voting through, not swearing in people who would release the Epstein files. And why is it that Republicans don't want the Epstein files released? And what hold is there over some of these people that are acting against the national interest? Well, actually, when you start looking at it, there could be even the speaker himself under a lot of pressure because he has something to conceal. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Anyway, there's my video that started on the government shutdown and ended on sexual hypocrisy. So there you go. That's what you get from ATP Geopolitics. Take care, guys. Speak soon.